Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed.
Namaskara, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching or listening, and welcome to this impromptu explainer episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. In this episode, I'm just going to briefly talk about my plans of starting a second channel, some of the thoughts behind it, some of the ideas behind it, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be, like most of these solo episodes are, quite unfiltered. So without further ado, I should say, let's get into it. All right. I did mention this in the last solo episode that I did, and I will link that up here. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction, wherever the hell it is, it should pop up here. Where I initially spoke about whether or not we can actually relate to people, and then sort of mentioned towards the end that I'd be starting a second channel. Unfortunately, I couldn't get everything on the road last week because I was a little ill. But knock on wood, it wasn't that bad. Things have been okay, and I'm back to being, I believe, 95% fit, 98% fit. So that's great. But yeah, let's get into it. Why start a second channel? Personally, for the kind of podcast that I want to do, a part of me does feel like it's going to take a lot longer, excuse me, for it to grow to some level. And nothing wrong with that, some things take their own time, and I need to just do my part of making sure that I put in the work and do my best to optimize it in such a way that there's more people that can see it. Which is why I thought a second channel would probably be a better idea to have as a fallback option, in the sense that I can use this channel, the second channel, so to speak, to upload clips from the podcast. Most people probably don't have 2 hours to sit and listen to a conversation at once. But if I broke it down into 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something of that sort, you can now watch part of the conversation that I've had about a certain topic with a certain somebody. So doing that can help in a lot of ways, probably cater to people who are only able to see shorter form content for a certain period of time. Secondly, um, I also see the bleh. Excuse me. I also see the second channel as a way for me to make solo content um, that I'd like to talk about a little more. Um, Things that I'd like to explore in terms of some of the ideas and the thoughts that I have, and so on. And I think I could do that much better if I keep it at a shorter format, around 10, 15, 20 minutes roughly, um, and put it on that channel and leave this channel mainly for the podcast and nothing else. Not to say that you probably won't see solo podcast episodes featuring myself from here on. You probably might. Again, it depends on scheduling, filling in, etc., etc. But ideally, I'd like to be making solo content solely, and that was not a pun at all, pun not intended, um, on that channel. And I don't mind explaining this or sort of giving you guys some hints of what I'm thinking about doing. It's mainly just solo talking head videos. I'm thinking of this series called and that's okay. Where basically I will take a phrase or not a phrase, but a sort of idea of, say, for example, we as humans don't know everything, and that's okay. So that would be the topic of one video where I'll just rattle on about why it's okay to not know everything. Um, Coming from someone who's in the past felt like I was a know it all, having done this over a certain period of time, and just life experiences in general have shown me that there's a lot more that I need to learn and that I don't know everything. So stuff like that is what I'll be sort of exploring. There might be other solo episodes where I try to share different perspectives, um, from my own perspective. I don't know if that makes sense, but probably, I guess, a better way of putting that would be to look at multiple arguments that could possibly be made for a certain discussion topic and so on. So that's probably what you'll get to see in terms of shorter form content on the new channel, which, again, if you don't know, is called Random Relatability Bite Size. Everybody just gives, I guess, the name that they see fit for these channels, and I thought that that would be a better way to do it. Because in comparison to an hour or 90-minute odd episodes of a podcast, 10 to 20-minute videos are definitely going to be bite-sized. So that's the reason why I thought I'd go with that name. um, I will make sure to link that in the description below so that you can subscribe to that channel, and show some love. But why do I feel like short form content is something that I should focus on? Probably just to sort of explore the thoughts that I have, um, as I'm talking, um, without having to necessarily, without having necessarily written these points down. I don't want to sort of sound like a negative Nancy and be like, oh, our attention spans are gone to shit as human beings and blah, blah, blah. That's maybe a conversation topic for another day. While that is happening or has happened over a period of time, um, I do want to reach a larger audience, and short form content is the way to go, at least in the world that we live in today. I mean, TikTok and Instagram Reels in India is probably the ideal path to take, which I would eventually like to venture into sometime later in the year. I haven't necessarily. Um, there's a lot of umming and ahhing in this episode, like in every solo episode, I guess. However, anyway, like, before I go into a different tangent about filler words and all that fun stuff, I'll stick to this topic of shorter form content. I do feel like it's something that I'd like to explore with TikTok and Instagram Reels, even though personally I'm not the biggest fan of using those platforms. I don't use them as much. Sure, I'll see a reel or two here and there. I'll see some TikTok videos that friends share with me, but that's the extent of how much I follow TikTok or Instagram Reels for that matter. But like I said, I would like to get a larger audience, and one of those avenues, or one of the avenues of seeking that, would be to create shorter form content. But for now, I would solely like to focus on YouTube, and then sort of add more things onto my plate once I'm comfortable. Because it's happened quite often with myself where I've tried to put too many things on my plate all at once, and then I've reached a point where I've overeaten, and then I have to purge. I mean, not literally, but figuratively speaking, metaphorically speaking. Um, so I'd like to focus on this for a little while, and then maybe expand into maybe uploading TikTok clips of certain snippets of the podcast, or solo TikTok videos where I briefly talk about something. So there's many different avenues that I could possibly explore, I should say, but I'm not going to worry about that now necessarily. But that the main reason for why, before I get lost into a different tangent altogether, the main reason why I want to explore shorter form content is that I want to reach a larger audience. And for the kind of podcast that I'm doing, I don't think that I'd be able to reach a larger audience just yet. Not that it's not possible, but it's probably going to take a little longer. So I want to see if I can explore, experiment, and possibly fast track that process. Since I've mentioned the sort of focus on short form content as a society today, largely speaking, yes, I do think that audiences today not feature, but prefer shorter form content. However, the deals that the likes of Pat McAfee and Joe Rogan and I forget what her name is, but this person who hosts Call Her Daddy, or that's also a podcast too. If you didn't know, now you know. They've all gotten exclusive multi-million dollar deals with platforms or companies and so on. So it does give me hope that podcasts are actually a thing that will thrive. But like I said, I'm probably beating a dead horse at this point. But for the kind of podcast that I want to do, it's probably not going to grow as quickly as some other ones. So I do need to explore my avenues to bring more eyes onto the product that is the podcast. But there's something to gain from both sides, I suppose. There's something to gain from multiple sides of content, and diversifying in content. Because I've heard some people talk about how diversifying their content has helped them out, because um, things can happen, things can change in terms of regulations on certain platforms, certain limitations, and so on and so forth. If you've sort of laid the groundwork to diversify yourself in some way, you've probably created multiple channels to keep it going. Okay, say for example, I can't tweet anymore. I have a channel through Instagram, or vice versa, So there's those sort of things that also need to be thought about from a perspective of creating content and frequently being active on the internet space. So I also look at it as that, like creating short form content for me is also a way of diversifying and exploring, if I can put it that way. But yeah, before I call it good on this episode, I also just want to mention that, it's not something that I thought about coming in. I did always think that I would want to make a clips channel for the podcast where I would upload clips of the podcast specifically. But as time has progressed, I feel like I've become more comfortable with doing some of these solo episodes, like I've done with the podcast. And I've mentioned this in the previous episode, but I'll mention it again. Doing these solo podcasts gave me an idea for how something could be done in terms of doing it solo. Um, well, most of these have been unfiltered and just the way they are. Those will probably be a little more edited and shorter than these rambly solo episodes that feature ums and ahs and sortas and kindas and etc. etc. Something that I still need to work on, something that I still need to focus on a little more. Probably not giving it the amount of attention it needs. Um, I guess that explains itself. However, something that I will look into. But anyway, going back to the point that I was making before I got into this tangent, you're never gonna always know what you end up doing sometime down the road, because you might gain ideas based off of putting in certain actions and learning from those actions. So for me, over the past year and a half almost that I've been doing this, I didn't initially think that I would be creating shorter form content. I solely just looked at the podcast as a way of expanding and then going from there. But I do see shorter form content as a way to sort of, as I said, attract a larger audience towards what I am doing. So you're never going to always know, but you can always have certain ideas and come in with certain ideas, but at the same time be flexible to adjust and adapt and do different things. All this to say, if you're thinking about starting something, don't let the fact that you don't know what to do necessarily stop you. Make sure you learn some stuff, like there's multiple avenues through where you can learn some stuff, be it through Skillshare or YouTube for that matter, if you prefer something free and not have to spend any money. I mean, of course, this is not sponsored. This is just me sharing the input that I've gained over time, because I personally looked at Skillshare um, when I started on this journey. So don't be bogged down by the fact that you don't know something. Feel free to do the research that you can and start wherever you are. And that's something that I try to tell myself often too, because I can be the kind of guy that procrastinates because I want to seek perfection, but then I sometimes need to tell myself that I'm not going to be perfect. Even if I see something as perfect, the subjectivity of somebody else is probably not going to see that as perfect, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying that that's something quite superficial to try and achieve, if that makes sense. So don't stop yourself, try something, figure it out, experiment, explore. You never know. You might find something that you love doing. With that being said, make sure to show some love, subscribe to the new channel. I will make sure to add a link in the description below. And I will also have a shorter trailer that comes out where I say what's going to happen on the channel and so on. And I'll upload that on Instagram as well. I was thinking of the possibility of mentioning more details about what I'm going to be doing on that channel, but I'll probably leave that for that trailer, which is going to be a minute or two long. But thank you so much, as always, for being a part of this journey, for supporting me along the way. I really appreciate it, and I'm really thankful for the fact that there's some people who follow what I'm doing and are part of this journey and are part of the platoon of perspectives. Not to sound corny, but I'm really thankful for that. So thank you. I'm really lucky in that sense to have a few people who care to see what I'm putting out there. So thank you so much to whoever you are. And yeah, I'm gonna call it good with this one. I will have another episode coming out this Sunday where I will be speaking to a guest. And from there on, we're just gonna have an episode a week on this channel, and then we'll have frequent content on the shorter form or on the new channel, Random Relatability Bite-Sized. But yeah, thank you so much once again. And as always, take care, stay safe, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know, random relatability might just be around the corner.